Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here. Welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep, put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here. Welcome back to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. You know, a lot of people know about the major urban population centers here in Texas, how they have become, very far left leaning, and no other example of that being Austin, Texas. But you're starting to see how that cancer there in Austin, Texas, and I say that very deliberately, can metastasize and spread to the surrounding communities. And one of those communities is Round Rock, just to the north. And there have been some interesting developments there in Round Rock with the independent school districts, just the same as many other independent school districts associated with these major urban population centers. And we want to talk with someone that has had, well, an up close and personal experience, and that is Jeremy Story. In addition to many other roles, Jeremy Story served for 5 years as the state chaplain for the Republican Party of Texas. He has fought for conservative principles in school districts, the Texas state legislature, and in national politics. He was asked and agreed to serve on President Trump's spiritual advisory team during his first campaign for the White House. Jeremy has also served as a precinct chair and chaplain of the Williamson County Republican Party. Williamson County is just north of Travis County, Austin, Texas. But Jeremy became the subject of national news when he stood up to a superintendent who assaulted a principal. The superintendent had impregnated her and threatened her in order to coerce her to have an abortion. He stood up to that same school board when they locked parents out of school board meetings using the independent school district police. As a result, the district unlawfully catalyzed his arrest and jailing. The charges were dropped after a lengthy battle, and Jeremy is now suing the school district of Round Rock in federal court for constitutional rights violations and Open Meetings Act violations. Jeremy Story, thanks for joining us here at the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
Yeah, thank you as well. I think I'm getting a little bit of feedback on mine. It's like it's repeating itself over and over again. I'm not sure why. If you're hearing that on your end or just mine, but if you're not hearing it, then we're fine.
Yeah, I'm good to go.
But
I hear you great.
You're good on your end. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
Well, let's go back and talk about the impetus that got you engaged there in Round Rock Independent School District and the incident between the superintendent and the principal.
Yeah, and of course, I love to talk about the local issue, but also it's just, these are issues that I think Texas schools and schools across the country are dealing with. The local issue that has become a statewide and national issue is just simply I showed up to a school board meeting to expose malfeasance at the highest level, the superintendent level and board level for a local school district, one of the larger school districts in Texas. And the net of it is 30 days later, when I wouldn't be quiet, and I would note, well, when Alan West wouldn't be quiet too, because afterwards you stood for us as well. But when I wouldn't be quiet after 30 days later, they showed up with the sheriff to my house and sheriff's officers and arrested me on Friday at about 5 o'clock with intent to hold me in jail all weekend. And what I'm saying and what is true, that it was punitive. It was purely punitive to try to silence my free speech because they didn't like that I was exposing the things that they were doing. That what would have been done was egregious. It was really simple. It was horrible and simple. The horrible truth is that our superintendent in the school district in that area had impregnated a principal. He is already married, but this was he had an affair, got her pregnant, In an effort to cover it up, he asked her or demanded from her that she would have an abortion. She is a Catholic Hispanic lady and said no, that she had made a mistake, but she did not wish to have an abortion and that she didn't think God would be behind that. And the superintendent texted her back, and I've seen these text messages basically saying, if you don't get an abortion, I'm going to come do it for you, essentially threatening her with assault and attempt to murder an unborn child. And when she wouldn't comply and went to the school board, he showed up at her house and aggressed against her, and then began to engage in legal warfare against her. She got a protective order served to him for family violence at the school district headquarters. And out of the 7 board members, 5 of them really worked to sweep this under the rug, and 2 of them tried to expose it. And what those 2 board members got for trying to expose it was years of censures or attempted censures and really outright harassment by the other board members. And of course, what I got for exposing it was being sent to jail unjustly. Since that time, my charges have been expunged. We had to fight for that. They tried to prosecute me under false charges and false affidavit. And as since that time, we are now suing the school district and the county for First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, and 14th Amendment violations. To put it in a nutshell, we should be able to speak in our public government meetings, especially our local school districts, without fear of those elected officials using their power to use the power of the state to arrest us and try to silence us out of retribution.
You know, it's interesting because you're bringing up something, and I juxtapose it against this whole thing about Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia grad student, and how everyone is saying that this guy has free speech to speak against the United States of America, to incite violence, to support a terrorist organization. And here you are, just a legal, law-abiding American citizen seeking to speak at a school board meeting, and you don't have that freedom of speech. Do you find this hypocrisy that we see playing out in public quite laughable?
Yeah, I mean it is a scary proposition because when you're as a citizen and you're just exercising free speech rights. In my case, I was in a board meeting and I stood up at my lawful time to speak, and the board chair said, "Hey, what you're about to say." Now, notice that word "about." I had not said anything. What you're about to say is non-germane, because see, she knew what I knew, and she knew what I was about to expose, and she said, "Well, that's non-germane. You can't say it." And I simply said, "How? Basically, how can you know that before I speak?" Yes, it's very dangerous when our elected officials believe that they can override your average citizen, but then people who aren't even citizens don't get greater privileges than we do. I think it's a significant problem. One of the biggest problems with the violation of freedom of speech in our country, in particular in this way, when there's corruption among officials at the state, local, national, whatever level, and then someone speaks out against them, and then they use the power of the state against that person, is that all the rest of our rights in the Bill of Rights, many of them are predicated by things guaranteed in the First Amendment:
Yes.
freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And there's a reason why that was put first. When you can silence someone for exposing, say, malfeasance, that's sort of the beginnings of things that we've seen in other countries where governments close in on people and stop freedom of discussion, which then stops all other rights from being advocated for and allows government to intrude on those rights. So it's very important that we don't set precedents, especially in our education systems, for school boards to be able to silence parents. But that is actually what has happened, of course, across the country for law-abiding parents that in the recent years were basically declared terrorists by the former administration for simply speaking out in advocacy of their children.
You know, the thing that drew me to your case was that here you were at the school board meeting. You were not arrested at the school board meeting. There was some time
No.
afterwards. Now all of a sudden they show up at your house to arrest you at your house. To me, that's a complete violation of your. I mean, what due process or what had they gone through to say that it's been X amount of days? Let's just go to our house now and arrest Jeremy Story.
Oh, it's egregious. In fact, when I spoke that first time at the school board meeting to expose what I thought was a security threat, I still believe the superintendent who's in power there is a security threat based on his behavior. And I was speaking that day. They were debating a resolution about security. And I said, look, the biggest security threat is sitting right next to you. And so when I said that, the moment I said, he has a protective order for family violence, and that's an empirical example of why he's a security threat, the chair banged her gavel, and in the same breath as banging her gavel, literally about a half second later, if you watch the film, two cops grabbed me from
Yeah.
behind while I'm on the speaking stand, mind you. I'm not yelling or screaming or anything. And they grabbed me and yanked me off the speaking stand and forced me out of the room. Now, at which point I began to speak louder because I was continuing my speech. The point is that I was doing nothing but speaking, and literally two school board police officers grabbed me. And what a lot of people don't realize is in Texas, and this is true in many districts beyond Texas, superintendents, the police chief of the school district reports directly to the superintendent. And this can create problems because these academic leaders, superintendents, have no police training, but they can use these police as little Gestapos to silence those who disagree with them.
And that's what happened in your case. I mean, basically, the little Stasi police, as we remember from East Germany, came after you. So this is the thing that I think a lot of people watching this segment will say, this happened in Texas?
Yes, it's pretty wild. I mean, in Texas, no less, we have to stand for our rights and for parental rights, and this is something we're seeing across the country. Education is very, very important, and the centerpiece of public education, I don't care what state you're in, should be parents and kids. Right? The system is set up or should be set up for the service of children and their parents. It's not set up for the service of teachers or administrators or fat cat contractors who are getting money off the public dime. It is set up supposedly for students. And so when you start silencing the voices of people in your district simply because they don't agree with you, we've gone in a wrong direction. And going back to your question about what they did in that 30-day period before I got arrested, I'll tell you what they did. Nothing for 29 days. And then on the 30th day, they had had enough of me. And all of a sudden, they generate a false affidavit that is full of lies and half-truths. There's not a word in it but hearsay. It's a lady who later became the police chief of the school district. She wrote an affidavit that she's basically saying, well, I heard this from so-and-so and such, and this person told me, and it's all about that. Well, I've also found out that since then that she is a lesbian and an activist for lesbian policies. And I can only presume that in part of her creating a false affidavit is that she had ideological disagreements with me, as not just, there was no legal disagreement. And she creates this false affidavit. And the only way she becomes the police chief, by the way, later on, is because the police chief there was police chief while I got arrested, it later resigned and moved on. And then the guy after him resigned and moved on. And then she became the police chief. And both of them resigned to move on, in part, I would say, because of the things that happened in my case.
Now, you talked about the affidavit. Who is the judge that reviewed this, that signed off for a warrant where they could come to your house?
Yeah, I don't know the exact name. It was a magistrate judge in Williamson County. I think Gossier, something along those lines. That's something that we have seen in the case, is that Williamson County, and this is what can happen to anybody, and we have to work on these laws, and we have to fight for better decisions in the courts, which is what I'm doing. Williamson County is pointing the finger at Round Rock ISD, and Round Rock ISD is pointing the finger at Williamson County, and they're both saying, "Look, it's not us; it's the other one. We passed the list along to them, so therefore we are absolved." I'm saying it in non-legalese, and we're immune from this because we passed it on to Williamson County. Williamson County is saying, "Look, we just did what the school district said," and to look at it, it's like two schoolyard kids pointing the finger at each other, and apparently nobody's guilty because they just point the finger at each other.
He did it. But
Right.
okay, so update us then. Where are you now with the lawsuit that you're bringing against these entities?
Yeah, and I love to talk about that, and then what it means for parents across the country and our
Absolutely.
state as well. But where I am personally in this lawsuit is I wasn't looking for a fight, but when the fight was brought to me, I felt the Lord really brought it, to be honest. I'm a follower of Christ, and I really felt that He brought it, and that I needed to stand strong in this for all parents. And where we are is we spent almost 3 years working to keep the school district from being able to dismiss the case. They kept filing dismissal after dismissal after dismissal, trying to keep it out of what's called the discovery
Yes.
phase of a trial or a case, which in the discovery phase, as you know, Alan, but for your listeners, that's when we can begin to subpoena people, force them to testify under oath, you do interrogatories, asking them questions they have to answer, acquire documents that we can demand from them. They've been trying to keep us out of that for almost 3 years. We're finally in that phase of discovery, have been, and we are moving forward to begin to force them to testify under oath about the things that they did, and to make the superintendent testify, the sheriff who's now lost his election, the assistant superintendent, a lot of people who have resigned and moved on. They're going to be called back, and they're going to be forced to testify and show why they did what they did and what really happened. And so this is a critical time. We've been fighting for 3 years. I've raised something like $110,000 because I'm not independently wealthy to get to this point. And now I'm working to raise more money to go. It goes into a separate charity. I don't touch it at all. It's a charity that somebody else runs that has a legal fund just for my case. I'm having to raise about another $100,000 to get through to the end of trial. And my hope is, and our desire is, that we will get a decision from the federal courts that will basically be a case that other people can hang their hats on and point to as why school districts and government entities in general cannot just cancel someone's free speech because they disagree with them and use the power of the state against them. And this happens frequently. But I would say one other thing about what that means. We pass all these laws, Alan, that you're very familiar with in Texas and other places, states across, that are attempting to reform education, right? Let's take one that I think you and I, and there's many that you and I would agree on, the one that I hope everybody on your show agrees on, keeping pornographic books away from kids.
Correct.
This is a bad thing. If it's not allowed in a jail in Texas, then it should not be allowed in a school in Texas. Let's just think about the worst of the worst pornographic books. Well, we pass a law that says you can't do this, right? Or parents can hold you accountable. Well, here's what happens. A lot of school districts will overtly try or covertly to skirt that law, that reform, whatever the reform is. It could be this reform or some other reform in schools. And they will go against it. And sometimes they'll do it just blatantly. And so a parent appeals to the school district. Hey, you violated the law. You shouldn't do this. And then their appeal goes all the way up to the school board level, which is a level 3 grievance in Texas. The school board often will say, well, we heard you, but we're not doing anything about it. Okay. Then the parent, if they want and they understand it, they can appeal to the Texas Education Agency, of which TEA can only take a certain number of cases, very small. And of those, they can only handle a few to do something about it. So most parents can appeal all the way to the highest level and nothing happens. So what's your alternative? Well, if you want to enforce a state law, a good one even, that's supposed to force educators into doing the right things, you then have to sue. That's your choice. And so parents right now in our state are forced to a place of, if they really want to enforce a law that our legislatures have already passed, they have to sue for that law to be enforced. Oftentimes, districts will intentionally thwart these laws with the help of the Texas Association of School Boards and other entities like that, with impunity, because parents' only choice is to sue the school district. And that's tough. It's very tough, like I've experienced, because you have to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars or be independently wealthy to do so.
So how can people support you in this quest? Because like you said, you have to raise this money. Where can people donate to? Because you're right, you're setting a precedent that sends a message so that this does not happen elsewhere in Texas and also elsewhere in the United States of America. Where can people support you?
So for me personally, and not directly to me, but we have a website called RISE, R-I-S-E, for F-O-R, students.org, or you can go to jeremystory.org and it just directs you back to riseforstudents.org. And you can donate there. You can also find all about the case, other places in the media that we've seen. We've been involved in talking about the case, history of the case. You can actually see the formal documents of the case. It's all right there, fully transparent. I have nothing to hide. And you can give on that website, and it goes to a fund called the White Hat Legal Institute, which is a nonprofit 501c3 charitable organization, which means that all it's IRS recognized, all tax donations are tax deductible, and every dollar of that goes to fight this legal case. Not a dime of it goes to me personally. It all goes to help fund my lawyer, our lawyers who are really doing this on an inexpensive level, not charging their normal rates to make sure that this moves forward.
You know, I often tell people that God does not call those people that are, gifted with great things. He gifts those that he calls. And I see you without a doubt being one of those individuals that God has said, I need you to step up into this breach. And he is, providing to you, and he is preparing you, and he is arming you to go out and do this battle, because that's just the nature of what we have going on in our country. So I said it then when I came down and supported you at Round Rock, and I'll continue to say it. I thank God for individuals such as yourself, Jeremy, who step up and says, here's the line in the sand. I'm not going to allow you to go any further. And I'm going to make a stand for my children, for my community, for my state, and for my nation. So I am humbled to know you as a friend, and I am humble and thankful that you would take the time to be here with us on the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
Yeah, thank you too for your allowing me to be here and to share this. I cannot stand alone, nor can you. We all work together, and it's a team sport. What we're trying to do to advocate for liberty in our country, for conservative values, it's really important. And so, yeah, for this case, the only reason why we've got it this far is people giving everything from $50 and $10 to $10,000 and more. I have to raise probably another 120, 110,000 to get through the end of the trial. And we're right now at that place where we can actually expose this and really become a case that other people can hang their hats on. So I appreciate anyone giving. And just also, I appreciate what y'all advocate for and what you advocate for. And you've experienced this too, just harassment from other people, elected officials who don't agree with you. And then they come after you with the power of the law. I mean, I went to jail. They put me in jail, and they wanted to keep me there all weekend. And had it not been for the press and free speech in our country and getting the story out over the weekend, I would have been there for a long time until they let me out, whenever that was going to be. Mm-hmm. But thankfully, because of the light of day being exposed, I was able to get out the next day. But, God did good things in there, in that jail cell. And I'm a believer. You're a believer. I know this isn't a religious podcast, but,
look, God is in the podcast. I was able to. God is in this God is in this podcast, so he's not excluded out. So you preach.
Well, glory to God, because in the midst of evil, which is a school district coming against me for no darn good reason other than they didn't like what I had to say, but I got put in jail. My kids watched me get arrested in my front yard. Yeah. One of my kids was threatened by the sheriff. That's one of the reasons why I came out, because the sheriff said they were going to arrest my older kid for harboring a fugitive if I didn't come out, believe it or not. His exact words were, we're going to do worse to your kid than what we're planning to do to you. I don't know if he used the word plan, but what we're going to do to you arrest-wise. So I got put in jail, and they then said, hey, I got put in jail with another gentleman who was an Army captain. He got arrested over at his house for the same thing. He had spoken out, and it was like we were drug lords or something. They went to his house the same time as mine, and we meet each other at the jail, like, what are you doing here? We didn't know anything. And so while we're talking in the jail there, one of the sheriff's officers comes up to us and says, we've been told you can't talk to each other. And they literally lock me up in the detox tank of the jail. Now, I've never drank or taken drugs or anything. So I'm in this detox tank, right? For purely punitive reasons, separating us out. Like we were collaborating on something just by talking about why did you get arrested? So I get put in jail. But here's the good news. I was put in the detox tank overnight with a bunch of people going through withdrawal from alcohol in particular. But through that process, we don't have time for it, but just to say, God opened up a door for me to begin praying for and share Christ with and share God with the people in that cell. And it was a miraculous door to that someone came to know Christ for the first time that night. Hope was brought into that cell. Yep. By the end of the night, many of the other guys had asked me to pray for them, or praying for each other. And there was hope that God brought in the midst of that situation. So God can take negative things like the state acting against us, or the school district acting against us for improper reasons, and turn it into positive things, like, say, winning this case, or in the case of that jail, even in the midst of that, bringing hope to a dark place.
What Satan and man intends for evil, God can turn into good. And again, I just want to thank you because, ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Jeremy Story, a legal, law-abiding citizen, a pastor, a minister, treated as a terrorist. But yet here in America, we have activist judges that are saying that terrorists should remain in our country and not be deported. That's what happens when you don't engage, when you don't get involved, and you fail to be steadfast and loyal. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Before they burn it down.